I need a filming umbrella. But someone's yelling across the shore. It's a little bit stressful. I don't know. There's definitely someone in the water. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Hi friends! So this is gonna be a wacky do special non-20 episode of soxcetera. So I'm Shannon, welcome, this is soxcetera. It's typically a knitting podcast, but today I'm thinking there's gonna be zero knitting content. And the reason for that is I started podcasting yesterday at Stanley Park in Vancouver. And as I was podcasting, something kind of bizarre happened and a little bit traumatic actually. First of all, I'd like to put a trigger warning on this episode. This episode is going to be dealing with mental health issues like living with depression and anxiety. I'm going to be talking about suicidal ideation. So if that is going to be triggering for you, then by all means, please take care of yourself and don't watch this. And I send you with love. If you've watched my previous episodes, you know that I live with depression and anxiety, and I'm pretty open about it. I talk about it on my blog, I talk about it in person, I talk about it on Facebook. I kind of talk about it wherever I can talk about it. Not talking about it is what brings down the crushing shame and darkness of living with it and feeling alone and feeling like I have to hide it. Living it out in the open is what helps me actually deal with it a lot better. Depression and anxiety is really misunderstood and it's not talked about a lot. Understanding it and educating people about it is the thing that's going to help those of us living with it deal with it better. What I wanted to do was a bit of a check-in, and yesterday when I started recording on the beach, that's what I had intended to do. Because I hadn't talked about it for a while, and I didn't want you to think that I was just cured, or I was just fine and dandy. Because while I'm a high-functioning, depressed person, it's something that I wrestle every single minute of every single day. And some days I have a lot of energy and strength to manage it and to pull out my tools and do the things that I've learned over the years to keep that emergency state at bay. And then other days it feels like I just want to lay down and be like, fine, I give up. And that looks differently. Sometimes that just looks like laying in bed all day. Sometimes that looks like a lot of crying. Sometimes it looks like fixating on dying. And about a year ago, actually almost exactly a year ago, it looked like actually taking literal steps towards my own death. I came really close to jumping off a bridge a year ago, and it was super scary for me and it was super scary for everyone involved. No one was around when it happened, but after I was kind of in a safe place, I called a friend and I called Steve, and then I wrote about it. I started to do some really heavy-duty work to try to make sure that I didn't find myself in that kind of a position again. So I guess one of the hardest things for me about living with depression is that people don't really see it or understand it or frame it as a disease the way that they do other diseases. And so I think there's this well-meaning pressure When people say things to you like, well, it's gonna get better and you won't feel like this forever. Essentially things that that send the message that you can conquer this, you can overcome it. And I guess with diseases, the thing is that they're a beast and they have a mind of their own. And while I can absolutely manage it, I cannot control it. Just like cancer, just like diabetes, just like cystic fibrosis, just like anything chronic that people live with daily. Yesterday, while I was sharing the story of what had happened to me a year ago, I started to hear someone across the water. And at first I thought it was just someone, a worker on a boat yelling to another worker about whatever they were doing. And then it continued and I realized the person was saying the word help. And then I realized that the person saying the word help was actually in the water. And this was all while I was talking about my encounter with the bridge last year. I had no idea if he had fallen in. I had no idea if he jumped from a bridge upstream. I had no idea if he had jumped off the shore just thinking that, he could just like take a little dip and get back up quickly and got pulled away by the current. I didn't know what was going on. But it felt triggery. It was really, I was having some flashbacks to what had happened, what was going on with me a year ago. And as I was just watching him sort of processing what I was seeing, it really started to look like he was going under and he was losing his grip. And so not being able to communicate with the people up the path, I decided to call 911 myself. They said sure enough someone else had a call in, but they kept me on the line, and so I watched this guy get rescued and pulled out of the water. I was just alone on the seawall. And so as I was watching this man get pulled from the water, I had sort of a very therapeutic cry on the beach, not knowing his situation, but feeling sad for the predicament he had got himself in, and really feeling sad for Shannon of a year ago, and for Shannon who sometimes wakes up and feels like she's not enough and believes that maybe death is the answer. And so it tripped me up a bit. When I'm in the zones, what I need is to get out of my own head. And I have called a suicide hotline before, and what that has done for me is it's gotten me through that zone where everything feels impossible. Because sometimes that feeling can last 10 minutes, sometimes that feeling can last for 2 hours, sometimes you wake up with that feeling. But it comes in waves. And so sometimes I just need help riding that wave. Like those voices are still there trying to convince me that I'm not enough and that you're probably making everyone's life more burdensome and worse, and it would be much better if you weren't around. That's always there. That never leaves. But in a non-emergency state, I've got the energy and the strength and the resources to quell that voice. Living with depression and anxiety is kind of like swimming in an ocean all day, every day. And you manage that lifestyle by coming into shore, taking breaks, floating on a dinghy for a little while, catching a ride from a friend, but you're always in the ocean. You never actually really get to leave the ocean. And on the days that it's especially hard are the days where you just can't find the shore. You don't want to bother a friend to borrow their dinghy because you feel like you've asked them too much. You don't want to catch a ride because you feel like that makes you weak and needy. And so you start to flail a little bit. It's always there. You're always in the ocean. while I absolutely do have a really wonderful life, I still have that undercurrent of a brain that would really like me to believe that I'm not enough and never will be. And so I've just found some ways to manage that. And like I said, some days it's doable and other days it's really, really tough. I hope this has been helpful and encouraging. I want it to be a hug to those of you who are living with this disease, and I want it to be a hug for those of you who have people in your life who are living with this disease. Take care, friends. There's a video that I'll link to in the show notes about one of the only survivors of people who've jumped off the what's the bridge called in San Francisco? The Golden Gate Bridge. He's one of the only survivors who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, and he's in a video, and one of the things that he says in that video that really resonated with me was that if he had died, nobody would have known that he actually really didn't want to die. People who don't struggle with depression, who haven't been to that really deep, dark place, what you don't understand is that you don't really want to die. You just want to stop feeling that intense pain. Social media isn't set up, oh, look at the little duckies, isn't set up for us to really share those darker places or to be like super authentic in our struggles. I think especially if you're living with depression, that can be extra hard because you think, oh, everyone has their shit together except for me. Social media is your highlights reel, and it's your friends' highlights reel. No one's life is perfect. No one has everything together. I write because I'm not very articulate, but hopefully you get the gist and you can pull something.